Good morning from Oakland, California, Poets&Quants headquarters. My name is Nathan Allen. I'm staff writer and editor for Poets&Quants and Poets&Quants for Undergrads. And I'm here to talk about our top 50 undergraduate business professors article that just went up a couple of weeks ago. This is our second year doing it. Last year, we had about 190 nominations coming in from students, former faculty, and current faculty. And we had 40 professors who were chosen out of those 190 nominations. This year, it doubled. We had nearly 400 nominations, and we went up to 50 professors. Some of these professors received 30 or 40 nominations. Some of them received less, but the list was whittled down to 50. And over the next few weeks, we'll be featuring a few of the more popular ones that we received, some of the more interesting ones, even though they're all super fascinating. And we're going to start this week with Ozias Moore, a professor at Lehigh University. Ozias, how are you today?
Excellent. Wow, what a great introduction. Thank you, Nathan. I'm so glad to be a part of this interview. Wow, such a blessing.
First of all, how does it feel to be nominated? You came to Lehigh in 2016.
Yes.
After getting your PhD from Cornell University. So just 2 years at Lehigh and you're already getting this recognition. How does it feel to be on this list?
Awesome and exciting. I think it's such a validation for the career path that I'm on. Because prior to coming to Lehigh University and doing my PhD at Cornell, I worked in industry for several years. And I had to make that decision. Do I make this 180-degree shift in my career and go back to get my PhD and switch to the academic career path? And so it's just an awesome validation that I am on the right track career-wise and kind of where I want to be. And so it's just an honor to know that the students and everyone is kind of connecting with what I'm doing.
Right, and I definitely want to get to that because you do have an interesting path. You're not one of the more traditional professors who went undergrad, grad, PhD, and right to teaching. You did have some time in the industry, but first I want to go back and maybe get to know you a little bit, help your students and colleagues get to know you a little bit. So where did you grow up and what was your childhood like and how did you kind of start going down this path of business?
So I grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in an area of Philadelphia called Mount Airy. I grew up in a household, I was a first generation college graduate. So I kind of grew up in a household with blue collar parents that stressed education. So I was in private schools throughout from kindergarten to 12th grade. And so there was a focus on education, but also when I was an undergrad, there was a focus on getting industry experience. And so after finishing undergrad, I kind of went into industry. But all of my roles were involved kind of with this interplay of people, process, and technology. And I started seeing a common thread across all of the organizations that I was a part of is that it all comes down to human behavior, the adoption of process, the adherence to process. And then I was also in a number of research and R&D divisions and corporate headquarter divisions, and we worked with universities on research projects. So I was getting involved in research on the corporate side. And then when I was working on my first master's at the University of Pennsylvania, I was getting involved in basic research. And that's when I started to love the ability to kind of immerse yourself into these topics that you really are interested in, getting data. And that started kind of this shift from the corporate world to needing to go back and get the PhD to become a researcher and going into this kind of academic side of it. So that's kind of the long and short of the story.
Right. And so it seems like you came into being interested in a professor from the research side. When did you realize that you started liking and enjoying being in a classroom and interacting with students?
So I think the interaction with the student side has always been, I would say, a part of my interest in my role as a mentor. So even when I was an undergrad or in other roles, I still kind of served as a mentor to students. So I always kind of live by this fiduciary kind of role of when I learn something, share it with others, and being able to provide insight to others, because I think I am mentored by many. Many people have contributed to my growth and helped me along the way. And so I kind of think it's important to do the same for others. And so I think in many ways, being in front of students in the role of a professor, you're really a facilitator of knowledge. You're helping students to kind of get exposed to new topics, to think differently than they may be currently thinking about a particular career path or a particular topic. So I kind of find it as an extension of many of those things I was doing prior to becoming a professor. But clearly in the role of the professor, you have a little longer time period. And I tell my students all the time, I'm your professor for life. So even after the semester is over, even after those 15 weeks are over, I look at my role as kind of this lifetime guarantee where if they want to reach back, my students, the top students, need a letter of recommendation or want input on career options, or if they're thinking about research. And I always encourage my students after they go on and graduate, whether it's they're doing a professional track or a research track, I love to have my students come back to talk in my classes to my students about their experiences. And so I look at it kind of this full circle where you kind of are involved with the students throughout kind of the key phases of their life.
Right. And what was it like being in a classroom for the first time in front of the students? Were you nervous?
No, not really. I look at it as an opportunity to share with them something I'm excited about. So I'm excited about the topics that I teach. And so I look at it as an opportunity to think creatively of how to present the topics to the students. I love to hear the students' insights and perspectives. And so again, I view my role in many ways as a facilitator of knowledge, kind of introducing them to topics, but hearing the students think critically, whether it be about a case or something that's happening in the news, and getting the students to really sit with these decisions that businesses and managers have to deal with. And so it's exciting to see the students think about these topics that I find really interesting and exciting.
And what's it like being a professor at Lehigh University? You've been there for a couple years now. Interactions with your colleagues and the students there now, what's the community like?
I think it's a very awesome community. The students are very similar to the students that I was teaching at Cornell, both private institutions. The class sizes are smaller, so I usually have about 40 or so students in my classes. So that allows me to get to know their names. I am able to assign them to teams. We're able to do a lot of interactive exercises in the classes, as well as the students working outside of class in their assigned teams. What's also great, a lot of the students at Lehigh are very involved and very career focused. And so a lot of the students are using the courses that I teach to help them in their interviews, to help them think about different ways in which these topics around organizational behavior can make them more effective as individual workers or more effective as managers in their student clubs and organizations and in their internships. And so I think it's great to really allow the students to learn the theory, but also learn to be able to apply it real time in their clubs and organizations and internships.
Yeah, so the last few minutes, I'm going to rattle off a couple of fun questions and then a couple of reflective questions.
Sure.
So here we go. If a breakfast cereal could describe you best, what breakfast cereal would that be?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I would say, let's go with something like a granola.
Okay.
A granola cereal. And the reason why I think granola cereal is kind of filled with a variety of nutrients. So I think I provide within interactions, my goal is to have an impact, to make a difference when I'm interacting with someone. I think also granola is crunchy and enjoyable, right? So when you're having granola cereal for breakfast, it's a full experience in your mouth, the crunching, the flavors, the raisins, the oats. So it's a full experience. And so I think I tend to want to provide a full experience when people are interacting with me. And I think granola is a good cereal that kind of gives you that similar flavor.
Professor Moore, you handled that well. That was a curveball.
I've seen before. I think I will use that one.
There you go. And if you had a spirit animal, what would it be and why?
Well, I would probably say dogs. I'm a dog person. I've had dogs pretty much my entire life. I have a dog currently. They're great companions. They're always excited to see you. And it's fun being able to teach them new tricks. And I think also there's a level of not just the cognition of them being able to learn, there's also a level of emotional intelligence that animals, but in particular for this particular answer, I think dogs provide. And they're great for exercise. They need to be walked, and they're going to get you out, whether it's snowing, raining, or good or bad weather. So I think it's a great example for what I think about.
You would be welcomed here because we are a dog office at Poets and Quants and have some dogs that often frequent the office.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. And then statistics say that being a first generation student, the odds are against you. And, getting through the first degree, and you did that, and then you went on to earn multiple other degrees, not only multiple other degrees, but from Ivy League schools. What do your parents think about you these days?
I think they're very happy. They're very happy. But I do think it's one of those things where the key thing, I think, in many ways is exposure, right? I think helping to expose students, whether they be first generation or not, to topics, knowledge areas, encouraging them to go on externships, internships, get exposed to a variety of professions and roles is what helps to allow people to see that they can do these things, or they may have an interest in those areas. So I think we know having good social support, whether they be parents, mentors, professors, or all the above, help students and others see what they're able to do, as well as their own work ethic and their ability to kind of see within themselves, right? So I think it was a perfect situation for me where I had clearly parents that valued education and wanted to see that be kind of important as far as my upbringing, but also having the ability to have great mentors. And clearly when you have great mentors, you must be open to feedback, right? So I think being able to be the kind of person that is able to receive feedback, but also implement the feedback. And I think when people are able to do that, whether they're first generation or not, all of those things, I think, are the foundation and the bedrock for success to help people along the way. Because we know along the way of the road of success, there are a lot of bumps of failure, or there are a lot of detours, yield signs, things that don't work out. So I think it's being able to develop a plan of action, staying committed to it, being consistent to it, keeping a positive attitude, and getting the people you need along the way to help you, as well as helping people along the way as well. Like, I think it's important to, there's a quote, I think it's an African proverb or a Chinese proverb that says, to lift as you climb. And so that's kind of reflective of, as you are going, you're helping someone else. And if we all kind of have that same value, there's always someone that's lifting, but also helping someone else. And so we're all able to win in the end. And another quote my grandmother used to always say, there's enough room in the sky for every star to shine. So we all should be motivated to help everyone. We all should be motivated to want to see everybody be self-actualized, to see everyone succeed, and to see everyone be on that path of success. And I think ultimately, again, as my role as professor / facilitator, that is my job. My job, I feel, is to help the students, to expose them to the topics, the theories, to give them an interesting environment, a community of learning where they feel comfortable in talking about the topics, high psychological safety, but also helping them to put a plan of action in place for their success going forward. And being that professor for life where if they need to reach back, they can for additional guidance and thoughts in that way.
Ozias, I'm going to have to cut us off, but I'm wondering if you have just any final thoughts before I sign us off.
Well, I guess as we started, again, I'm excited and thrilled to be on the 2018 Poets and Quants Best Professors list. Again, I feel as though this is both a blessing and honor. It validates kind of, as I mentioned to you earlier, this path that I'm on. And I'm so fortunate to know that I'm making a difference in the lives of the students, making a difference in my research. And I'm excited to continue to see what the future has in store for me and the students and Lehigh University. And so again, I thank you. I enjoy reading Poets and Quants, and I follow you on Facebook and Twitter. And again, it's great. Thank you for all the great work that you and your team continues to do to showcase the work that business schools and business professors, MBA students, undergraduate students are doing. Because as I mentioned before, exposure is key. So I think it's important to expose people to the business area. The whole scholarship of how we are thinking of this field of management, whether it's as professors, as students, the undergraduates, the ranking systems you put out, all the articles you put out, great knowledge. So I thank you again for all the work you're doing that really supports and helps us in what we're doing.
Thanks, Ozias. This is definitely a team effort, and I have to mention Andrea Carter, who was once on staff and is now a freelancer, was the one who does pretty much this entire project. So I'm basically just getting on screen and taking credit for her work. So Andrea Carter is the one who sifted through the 400 nominations and picked out the 50 that would be recognized this year. So thanks, Ozias, very much for your time. Thanks for spending this time with us. For our viewers out there who are watching this, you can see Ozias' profile as well as 49 others on poetsandquantsforundergrads.com. The main article is there, and all of the professors' profiles are there. There's more information about him. Poetsandquantsforundergrads.com. My favorite thing about his profile is we ask everyone what their age is, and he answered young at heart. But judging by his looks right now, he's definitely one of the younger ones on the list, which is also a great just example of the work that you're doing at a very early age and how you're connecting with your students.
Thank you.
So we thank you very much, and goodbye from Oakland, California.